Hello everyone, this is Argent, and welcome to Fire Emblem Month. I kind of wanted to try doing a themed month for once, just to celebrate a bigger franchise. Some of these franchises are really big and it's kind of hard to cover all of it in one or even two videos. So this month we're going to, every week, if I get around to making it, is going to have a Fire Emblem game as the reactionary review, or probably several games if they're plot interrelated. And we're also going to have character profiles of a bunch of Fire Emblem characters. Now, with those, it's going to be a bit of a trial. Like for the first one, I hope to do one of the three lords from Fire Emblem 7, Hector, Lyn, and Ellawood in one video. If I find they're just getting too long, I'll start doing one for each character. There's just a lot to get through. So I'll start doing those, and I might do like groups of characters from the same game based on something. Like, so I might do Nor retainers or Hoshido retainers. So why now? It's kind of to celebrate the release of Fire Emblem Fates, a game which I initially thought was pretty bad, but because I'm such a Fire Emblem fanboy, I bought all three versions of it. And having played through all three campaigns and replaying the campaigns a bunch of times, I personally have come to appreciate it. The story is kind of trash, but the gameplay is awesome, and the support conversations are really, really solid. So, and that's kind of what we want in Fire Emblem games. So we'll get to that when we get to that. So this is a celebration of one of my two favorite franchises. Now I think I'm going to take you back to the past, not to play the shitty games that suck ass, but to play one of my favorite franchises of all time. Fire Emblem was first released in North America in 2003. 2003, back then I was 13 years old. Actually, when the first game came out, I was 12 years old because my birthday's at the end of the year. So I was 12 years old when the first game came out, and I got it for my birthday. And I started playing it, and I thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. As a kid, my favorite games were like turn-based RPGs, like Pokemon, like Tactics Ogre, like Quest 64, kind of stuff like that. I also really liked strategy games. I was really big into Command and Conquer. I was really big into Civilization, kind of all that stuff. And so when I got Fire Emblem, I'm like, this thing mixes all my favorite aspects of various different games. And I played the shit out of it. I had so much fun. The Fire Emblem games are probably some of the most replayable games of all time, which we'll get into. There's so many different strategies you can pick. The basic concept is very simple but very deep. So I think they're kind of the emblematic of what a good JRPG can be. They're hard and they kind of got easier over time. I think they more just got more fair, but we'll talk about as they go. I am a fanboy of the Fire Emblem series, and I've been hooked since the first game that was released in North America, Fire Emblem 7. The other ones I've looked at. In particular, I played Fire Emblem 6 because it was the first game to be released on a handheld and kind of the first modern one. I haven't looked at any of the SNES or NES ones just because they're really old, the interface looks really dated, and I don't really trust the I'm not like great at these games. I can play them on hard with not too much difficulty, but Japanese hard is something else entirely. Like if you play the Devil Survivor or any of the Shin Megami Tensei games, those games aren't watered down and they're fucking like really difficult for a North American. But I'm a fanboy of Fire Emblem. If I see a Fire Emblem game is coming out, I just buy it. I don't look at reviews. I don't look at previews. I just buy it. It's like me with the Souls games. If there's a new Souls game coming out, I'll just buy it, pre-order it, don't even have to see anything about it. I just trust it. I used to be that way for BioWare until Mass Effect 3, but I still thought maybe that was just a dud, and then I pre-ordered Inquisition, and Inquisition was fucking awful. So I don't even look at BioWare games anymore. Same thing with Zelda. I used to just buy every Zelda game that came out until Skyward Sword, which I still haven't finished. I beat Ocarina of Time maybe like 12 times as a kid. Majora's Mask maybe like 3 or 4, just because it's a lot longer. Wind Waker 2 or 3, Twilight Princess 2, just because it's much longer. The GBA game like dozens of times. But Skyward Sword was so bad it destroyed one of my all-time favorite series. But we still have Fire Emblem. So without much ado, more ado, let's get into it. So let me see what image tab I have open. Okay, so this is crappy quality just because this is from the GBA and this is from Fire Emblem 7. So I think if you're looking at this, it should be readily apparent kind of how it works. In Fire Emblem, the map is divided up into a grid. There's different terrain, there's forests, there's castles, there's villages, there's rivers, and you have units. Each unit is just kind of a crappy little sprite, and the sprites do get a lot better as we go through. On 3DS, they look really good. This is GBA, though, so what do you expect? So you have these little sprites that represent a character. Each individual character has different stats. Their character has different stats, and their class has different stats. And interestingly enough, the stats are often part of the character's personality. In Fire Emblem Fates, you have a character named Hector who kind of views himself as a superhero, and it's a running joke in his support conversations that he has really bad luck, and in-game his character has no luck. There's also characters who are obsessed with training, who might have super high skill. There's characters who are noted as being very quick or very strong, and it's often used as a running joke, which is good. So we kind of have a link, and that's kind of one of the strengths of the Fire Emblem series, is it very strongly links the character's abilities to the story, which is a problem you have in a lot of RPGs, where they say this is the strongest man who's ever lived, but then you get your ass kicked. That doesn't happen in Fire Emblem. I remember in Fire Emblem 7, there's a character called Pent, who is the mage general of some country. And when you first see him, he's an allied character, and he literally fights an entire army by himself and just completely owns them. So you have all these characters. There's a limited number of characters that you recruit over the course of each game. Most of the time you just get them. Sometimes you have to talk to them, like they might be related to or have a relationship with another one of your characters, and you have to talk to them. Sometimes there's like secret missions you can unlock, and you get characters there. And they all have a different class. So let me see here. Where's the class tree I found? Where is it? Too many tabs open. So this is like an example of a class tree. So each character has a base class and an advanced class. Most characters can switch to at least 2 advanced classes. So the base classes have a variety of different functions. A well-balanced army will have members of different classes. So we have lords. Lords are basically just kind of all-around good characters. They're main characters. So they are, generally speaking, just strong because of plot. Then we have like fast characters who have very high skill. I'll get into the stats in a minute. Who have very high skill. So we have thieves, and thieves can become assassins or rogues. Then we have swords masters who are come from myrmidons, and they're just extremely good at dodging and extremely good at critical hits, but they have low strength and defense. We have archers who are very good at getting critical hits and have long range attacks, so people can't counter, but they're fairly weak. However, once they kind of become snipers or rangers, they get very good dodge. We have hero, which is kind of an all-round one. We have dragons, dragon people. We have all kinds of different mages. We have mages who use anima, like elemental magic. We have shamans who use dark magic. We have monks who use light magic. We have clerics who can use a variety of different things. And then we have flying units, which is kind of one of the bread and butter of this series, is you have Pegasus Knights who are in every game. And they start out as being kind of very weak, kind of fast but low defense, low attack enemies. Class. And over time they become really fast, really strong, and they can fly over terrain because they're Pegasus Knights. You also get Wyvern Knights, which are like Pegasus Knights, but they're much slower. They don't have any resistance to magic, but they have much higher defense and strength, so they're basically flying tanks. So they even have for Fire Emblem 6, I think this is for. They have like pictures of the different characters, their classes, and what they can become. Each character can normally become one of two different classes, and the different classes will have strengths and weaknesses. Like knights can promote to great knights who are faster because they're on a horse and they can move further but have less defense. And then you have generals, which has the highest defense of any class in the game but is slow as balls. And there's kind of a triangle because mages are very effective against heavily armored units, but they die very quickly to them. So you have to like form your battle lines and stuff, put the heavy armored or high dodge guys in the front. It's just a lot of fun. So the stats in Fire Emblem are you have health, which is pretty self-explanatory, strength, which is physical damage, um, skill. Actually, this one doesn't have magic. Oh, that's kind of annoying. Oh right, because yeah, that was originally characters either had magic or had strength, but now they have magic and strength. So that's physical attack, or if it's magic, it's magical attack. We have skill, which is kind of an interesting thing in Fire Emblem. Skill is the chance to hit an opponent, also the chance of getting a critical hit. Speed is how many times you can attack. Normally, units can only attack once, but if they get high speed, they can attack twice per round. Then you also have luck, which is a variety of different things, including dodge, etc. Constitution is something they took out. Resistance is obviously how much damage you take from magic, and defense is the amount of damage you take from other attacks. So I'm just explaining the basic thing. Here's another example of a battle map. That's Lindis there, and you can move her around. So once units kind of meet each other, they go into a combat like this. And these have gotten much better over time. They look amazing in the newer games. I normally have them turned off just because quicker, and it takes a long time to sit and watch all of these. So the two units will battle. They'll each get Y speed. They get two attacks. In cases like this where there's an archer, he can't counterattack because he just has a sword. So that's kind of the basic concept of the Fire Emblem games. There's always kind of changes between them. They'll always add classes. They'll take some classes away. They'll tweak the abilities of classes. In the later games, you have hybrid classes who can use sword and magic. You'll have classes that kind of have other stuff. They've added a lot more abilities in, and individual characters now get unique abilities. So there's a whole lot of variety in the games. The real kind of strength of the games, though, is support conversations. I know this kind of looks like shit, but this is captured from a 3DS. Actually, it's the same color as mine. Um, so when two units end a turn next to each other in Fire Emblem, it builds a relationship between them. You see little hearts go over their head when they end a turn or they fight next to each other. Once that gets high enough, you unlock a support conversation. Normally, in previous games, there was a C, B, and A, but in the newer games, it goes up to S. So the support conversations are kind of like a little mini plot. Two characters will interact, and they will. Normally, there will be kind of a consistent story. Like the first one will be C, will be like the beginning. Like it might be the two characters are going to go buy something, or one of the characters is trying to improve themselves, or they're discussing part of their shared past, or it's kind of like a romantic plot. But they will go through that, and so you'll have the C conversation, the B and the A conversation, and they're generally speaking the best parts of the game. You really get, like, there's a lot of depth to every character. In the new games, every character can support with almost every other character. So if you have like 20 characters, you'll have 20 sets of 3 or 4 conversations each. And every conversation will reveal kind of a different part of each character. And it's a lot of fun. It's really, really interesting to kind of go through them all. And that's kind of what keeps people coming back to them, is each game you can kind of do something different. You can say, well, in this game I want these two people to be friends. Oh, and there's a gameplay effect. Characters who have support with each other get a sizable bonus when they're next to each other. The bonus is dependent upon each individual unit's strength. So you might want to have, in this case, we have, let's see here, Elise, who's a magic unit, and Leo, and you might want to have them support each other, because Leo is a mage knight, so he'll give defense and magic to Elise, and Elise will give speed and magic to Leo, and they both kind of complement each other. Or Arthur and Camellia complement each other as well. So it has this gameplay thing, and it's literally like your characters are becoming brother in arms. Now, in previous games, the original Fire Emblem games, you were limited to 5 levels of support. So you could get up to A with one character and up to B in another, which is a huge... it made support kind of shitty, because they were so much fun, these conversations. They were kind of the heart of the game's plot, but you were so limited to them. So people would go like a couple levels and then restart the game once they'd maxed out their supports. So in the newer games, they removed the cap. You can support with as many people as you want. However, you can only reach S-level support with one character, because S-level support, if they're opposite gender, means getting married. And if they're the same gender, it means they're BFFs. Yes, there's no... To my knowledge, homosexuality in Fire Emblem, it's occasionally implied as a joke, though. Actually, I think I'll do one... I'll just do a full reaction review of the first Fire Emblem game I played, and this will just serve as kind of a retrospective of the series. So the Fire Emblem games, that's kind of the heart of the gameplay, is you go through different levels, you level up your characters. Each character in every Fire Emblem game has 20 levels in a base class and then 20 levels in an ascended class. And normally speaking, they get a big bonus to their stats once they transition to their ascended class. Some units become pre-promoted, like they already come as their second class, and they tend to be worse because for gameplay purposes, they normally are the equivalent of having ascended a unit at level 10. You can ascend units anytime after level 10, but it's really just not recommended until they get to level 20 so you can maximize their stats. So there's 3 different types of weapons in Fire Emblem. There's spears, axes, and swords. Swords beat axe, axe beats lance, lance beats sword. Pretty self-explanatory. You also have bows, which are super effective against dragon units and Pegasus Knights for obvious reasons. And you have magic, which isn't really effective against anything. Like, it's not super effective, but in practice it's very good against heavy armored units because they can't use magic and they have very little defense against it. So just something else on the whole support conversations. This was less common in the earlier games, but as it developed, your characters would have different endings based on who they supported with. They would get married at the end of the game, and it would kind of change them. Like, one character might be the lord of a kingdom, and depending on who his wife is, it'll say, like, with her tenderness and beauty, she was able to win the people over. Or with her administrative skill and sense of justice, they were able to reform the kingdom and win the love of the people. So the ending will change. I mean, the main story ending won't change, but kind of the ultimate fate of each character changes. And between Fire Emblem 6 and 7, because 7 is a prequel to 6, you can kind of determine who the canonical father and mother are of various characters. Normally in Fire Emblem, how it works is you know one parent, but there's multiple choices for the other. Like Liliana in Fire Emblem 6, her mother can be Florina, it can be Lynn, it can be a number of different people, but we know her father's Hector. Likewise in Fire Emblem 6, Roy can have any number of different mothers. This was eventually kind of changed, and I'll get into that when we get to Fire Emblem Awakening, but it's very interesting to engage with all of this different stuff. And you're thinking, well, we have all these different endings. I want to see all the different endings. I want to see all the different support conversations. There's a limited number of units you can use, so you want to replay the game and use like different units, different supports, see what works better, try out different play styles. Like maybe you really like magic units and you haven't used speed units, and then or maybe you only use speed units, and you can try out different mixes. You can kind of give each character a spot in the limelight. And I think that's just... I'll get into more kind of the political themes of it, but this is kind of an introduction to Fire Emblem Month, an introduction to a great gameplay series that I absolutely love. So I hope this was kind of an enjoyable video. I know I didn't really get into the politics like I thought I was going to, but I think this serves as an introduction for those of you who just don't know about this series. I would say if you can get the emulators really easy for Fire Emblem 6 and 7, I'm going to warn you, Fire Emblem 6 is hard as balls. It wasn't designed for a North American audience, so it's much harder. 7 is hard. All of the pre Path of Radiance games are pretty hard, with the exception of Sacred Zones, which is pretty easy. Um, but yeah, if you can get a hold of the emulators, which is pretty easy. I only say that I would prefer if you buy them. I'm not sure if they're available on Virtual Console. It's when I tell you to emulate something, it's not because like I don't want to give the company money. It just might be really hard to get a hold of it. I don't even have a copy of them anymore. I think I either lost them or I had borrowed them from someone or something like that. And I think my Game Boy Advance SP is dead. I do have a copy of the later games though. So that was Fire Emblem retrospective. Next time we're going to talk about Fire Emblem: The Burning Blade. This is Argent, and I'll talk to you later.